At this point, anime, and especially shonen, adapting certain arcs of their story as movies is nothing to write home about. Demon Slayer Mugen Train was the one I'd say broke the dam back in 2020, with studios realizing just how much money they could make off of theatrical releases. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only reason these movies get made, as a lot of them do work better in a movie format. However, I do think a lot of these would just have been adapted into a regular season just a few years ago. So in that regard, I don't think it would be unusual to have the same concerns regarding the Chainsaw Man Re:Zero movie. With fans being desperate for new anime content after not getting a new season for 3 years and no season 2 on the horizon as of yet, it would make perfect sense to cash in on that interest with a movie. But I don't think the criticism is really warranted here. The arc covered in this movie feels like it was created especially for a big screen adaptation, in the way the story beats flow into each other and how much of a self-contained story it presents. I personally was awestruck by the quality of the movie, not only the fights and animation, which was obvious going into it, but also the heartfelt moments and the characterization both Re:Zero and Denji enjoy within it. I really enjoyed writing this video, so if you enjoyed this video and want to hear more of me talking about anime, do consider leaving a like and subscribing so you don't miss out on any future content. By far the most interesting character of the movie is, in my opinion, Re:Zero. Despite only appearing for a short few chapters, she left an impression on readers that few other characters in the manga could match. And the first half of the movie especially sells that feeling. Despite Chainsaw Man typically being a very action-rich show, this movie forgoes a lot of this in favor of character development for a large part of its runtime. And while most of you could probably imagine that her conversations with Denji, the connection she seems to be having with him is just acting, you can't help but get invested in their relationship. Re:Zero herself is interesting because of the duality she presents. On the one hand, she's a trained assassin and a bomb devil, someone who was created to execute missions and kill without remorse. But deep inside, she's just a girl who wants to escape from those roots, to just run away and live a simple life. That's why her betrayal hurts even more. Even though it was her mission to kill Denji and get the heart of the Chainsaw Devil, you can see that she regrets having to do it. At first, she does just try to get close to Denji for her mission, but over the course of their time together, she truly grows to care for him, to the point where we as the viewer can't exactly know what part of her affection for Denji is genuine and what part is just an act. My favorite scene of the movie, by far, is the pool scene. So much character development and symbolism in just those few minutes that it's hard to explain just how much I love it. First, with the butterfly spider imagery. At first, the viewer is led to believe Denji is supposed to be the butterfly, getting caught in Reza's web of deception, which would ultimately lead to him being hurt or potentially even killed. But when the spider then dies after eating the butterfly, because the butterfly turned out to be poisonous, we can start to really understand what happened. Re:Zero has actually caught feelings for Denji. The pool scene also really shows how close they've grown, by how vulnerable they let themselves be around the other, how much they trust the other. Because the water is a quite disarming environment for both of them. For Denji, because he can't actually swim and needs to rely on Re:Zero should something happen. But it's even more of a dangerous place for Re:Zero, since she can't use her powers when wet. But where Re:Zero is certainly the focal point of the movie, Denji gets just as much, if not more, character development throughout it. Denji got used to just being used for his body and his power, with people only leading a Chainsaw Man instead of Denji the human. And for a while, he was fine with that. He had a roof over his head, nice clothes to wear, and good food to eat. But Re:Zero was the first one to show that that was not what life was supposed to be. Denji was still a child, someone who should be going to school and having fun with his friends instead of risking his life to kill devils, and that really left an impact on Denji. Just as Re:Zero was living out her fantasy of being a normal schoolgirl with a boyfriend, so did Denji's desire to have a normal, real relationship with people around him. It is really telling that Denji, whose sole goals in life so far were of sexual nature, almost ignored the fact that Re:Zero was naked in a pool scene, and instead just enjoyed being with and around her. It shows that he has matured somewhat, learning of emotions that he's never had before. Would you rather be a country mouse or a city mouse? This is a question posed at several points throughout the Chainsaw Man movie, and while it may seem like an innocuous question at first, it really encapsulates the central theme, describing and having an impact on how each of the characters in the movie act throughout it. In case you didn't know, the Town Mouse and the Country Mouse is one of Aesop's fables, a collection of stories dating back to ancient Greece, often using animals with human traits in order to teach moral lessons. But even if you aren't familiar with the term, you're sure to have at least heard of one or two of them. The Boy Who Cried Wolf, The Tortoise and the Hare, and The Goose That Laid the Golden Egg are so influential that they've become part of our everyday language. While the Town Mouse and the Country Mouse doesn't have quite that impact on our everyday life, it still contains a very important life lesson. In the original tale, a proud town mouse visits his cousin in the countryside. They share a simple meal, after which the town mouse scoffs and invites the country mouse to the city to get a taste of the fine life in the city. The country mouse is initially amazed by the fine foods and beautiful surroundings until they get interrupted and attacked by a cat. The town mouse then tells the country mouse that his parents were killed by the cat and that he constantly has to live in fear of attacks. After hearing this, the country mouse decides to go home, preferring security to opulence. But while that is supposed to be the moral of the story, real life is never that simple. In the Chainsaw Man movie, this question gets answered in several different ways, there being no clear right or wrong answer. Denji wants to be a city mouse, and it is quite clear why. He has experienced the worst of the worst of what it means to be a country mouse, growing up in poverty, always dirty and hungry. His ideal life is just having something delicious to eat, so being used by the people around him, constantly putting his life on the line, seems like a worthy trade-off for being able to live out his dream. One character who has a very similar view on this, and who you might not expect to have the same outlook on life as Denji, is Aki. But instead of delicious food, the dream he's willing to give it all up for is killing the gun devil. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the titular character of the movie, Reza. She questions Denji's resolve to stay in the city and even proposes running away with him to get away from all the danger and live a safe and quiet life. However, by the end of the movie, we see how Denji has influenced her thinking and actions, as instead of running away, which she easily could have done, she tried to come back to meet Denji in the cafe. Similarly, the Angel Devil says his heart is in the country, but Makima brought him to the city. His unwillingness to even be here and his apathy towards everyone around him speaks volumes to how he was forced to move into the city. However, you can see this start to change a bit towards the end of the movie, when Aki sacrifices part of his lifespan to save him, with him asking, is the city a nice place? However, the most interesting take on this question comes from none other than Makima herself. She says she prefers the country mouse, but she takes a different approach to the question entirely. She doesn't liken herself to the mouse, instead explaining that she finds it rather calming to use dogs to dig out mice in the countryside. And this part is really important because it shows how much she sees herself as superior to everyone around her, thinking that no one else is on her level. Because while she doesn't see herself as a mouse, she sees someone like Reza as a mouse she's digging up, while Denji's a dog she uses to do that. And in the end, she shows that there's no escape, regardless of if you're a country mouse or a city mouse. Even if you try to escape to the countryside, Makima will find you and make your life unsafe regardless. Personally, I think the Reza movie is worth watching, even if you don't particularly like the series. It delivers such a complete and self-contained story that even someone who hasn't watched season 1 of the show could enjoy it. As someone who has read all of Chainsaw Man so far, I can say with confidence that this is my favorite part of the series, and I'm really glad the adaptation did it, and especially Reza's character, justice. In the end, Chainsaw Man Reza movie isn't just another shonen movie that fills the gap between seasons and something to get the viewers hyped with breathtaking action scenes. It's a movie about two people who never got to be children and who were able to experience it only for a short moment. The country and city mouse question lingers long after the credits have ended. Denji dreams of the city's bright lights, while Reza longs for the countryside's quiet peace. But neither of them ever get what they want. In Chainsaw Man's world, freedom is always an illusion. every choice leads back to the same trap, same system, and the same predator waiting in the dark. Reza's death isn't just the end of a love story, it's a death of a possibility. For Denji, she was proof that someone could care for him without seeing the Chainsaw Devil. And for Reza, he was proof that there was still innocence left in the world. But like the mice in the fable, they both discover that safety and happiness can't exist in the same place. And as Makima's dogs close in, we're reminded that no one escapes her city, her control. Not Reza, not Denji, and not even the viewer's hope for a happy ending. The only peace this world allows is the fleeting kind. A swim in a quiet pool, a conversation in a cafe, a moment before the bomb goes off. Thanks for watching.